Live.
No, live. Here we are. It's the Angela and Joseph show. No, it's Magic and Wisdom. Um, but I have my, let's see, on the other side, I have my little honeybee pin that I got in Czechoslovakia in Prague. So I'm honoring honeybees today.
Mm,
We are happy to welcome everybody to the magic and wisdom of essential oils. We have
indeed.
fun things to share today. We're going to talk about hydrosols, and I have a whole lineup in front of me here. And Joseph has something really fun and cool to share too. So it's all about keeping our cool. Now, we're in summer, so keeping our cool can mean heat and temperature, but it can also mean all the stuff that's going on in the world, especially today.
Yeah.
And we're going to keep cool about it because when we can be managing things on an even keel and responding from that space, it's so much easier. And it really upsets the people that want to trigger us. So that's even more fun. So we're going to talk about that. And I've got my Bigfoot Sasquatch cup today to keep us in a bit of mystery.
Mm. Well,
And
can I do some magic then?
let's do some magic. He's got his Harry Potter glasses on.
Yes. I've got the lightning bolt covered. Okay. Um, so I'm living in a project of urban restoration, single wide mobile home in a elder community, in a 55 plus community. Let me be technically correct. Um, and I bought it from a guy who was leaving the country as fast as he could, and so I got everything in it. And I won't even start on the list of one of the gems in it was this grungy old mister. Okay. And it was for spritzing rose water as best I can ascertain. And it was grungy. It wasn't in good shape. So I cleaned it up. And then I got some beautiful wild rose hydrosol from a dear friend of mine. You might know her. Her name's Angela. Okay. And so it's first renewed occupant or the thing inside is Rosa rugosa. Okay. And so we're going to expect a lot of stories about Rosa rugosa from you today. But what I wanted to do is what we should always do, in my estimation, is, you know, get experienced. Okay. So what I'm going to say is if you have some hydrosol nearby, or if you could just imagine a hydrosol, just imagine. Imagine how much imagination it takes to just imagine. Okay. And what I'm going to do,
Julie's here. Yay. All right. I'm taking my
I'm
rose
all wet now.
and I'm going to spritz. Oh,
Spritzed. Here, Shari, cover
mm,
your eyes. I'm going to spritz you right now. Okay.
you cover their eyes. We're going to spritz you. Oh,
Oh, it actually hit the screen.
imagine, imagine that mist coming over you. I imagine a coastal mist. Mm,
Yeah.
all right. I want to take you on a little journey of this distillation. So, if
Can
I
I
may,
do one more preview?
yes.
Okay. So I don't have the source that I got this from, but it's reliable and I'll find it someday. Um, Floral waters were the main um, liquid plant medicine or a main liquid plant medicine in the Middle Ages. Okay. And in the roots of our use of essential oils, okay, before essential oils were used, they were usually discarded because you were making floral waters and that was the pure distillation. And that stuff floated on top was a very small amount and was just discarded. Okay. Now, they did not have a still like we're going to see in a few minutes. The technology was not that developed, but it was developed enough that they could make a lot of floral waters. And the stuff that wasn't your high quality floral water that you wanted to keep for sacred and mundane purposes, you just tossed the shit. Okay? So the things that we treasure in little 5 and even 1 ml bottles, like rose essential oil, it's a really pretty new thing in the world of medicinals, but this rose water is probably one of the more ancient fluid ways of, there's going to be herbal teas and stuff like that, but to get the essential oils, tiny microscopic, almost homeopathic amounts in this hydrosol. So what's
Yeah.
old is new.
When I did my distillation, I could see a little tiny sheen in the filter, and I just took my finger, and it was only enough to cover the tip of my index finger. After we got to get almost 3 quarts of hydrosol off of that distillation.
What
Uh,
did your finger?
yeah, I know, like my finger.
Ah,
I think I did third eye with it when I
yeah.
did it. Yeah. So Peter Holmes in Aromatica, his clinical guide. I think this is volume 2. He talks about rose hydrosol. Um, is the oldest Rose water is the oldest plant perfume and medicine known, dating back to Assyrian and Babylonian cultures in West Asia. Water distilled uh, co uh, what is that word? Cohabated? I don't know what that means. What
Cohabited, yeah.
was recorded in the 850s in the Persian or Iranian province of Sabur, and later perfected in the 11th century in the Shiraz area. And with its extraordinarily stable shelf life, the prized Persian rosewater of the damask rose, that's what they
Mm.
started doing it with, widely exported to the east and the west until the mid 18th century. Still, it appears that China developed the skill of making rose dew or rose water long before 958 arrival of the famous Persian missions. So it was around in China even before then. So very medicinal, very much used. Uh,
Mhm.
so I want to take you on a little bit of a journey from this rose distillation. And let me get my share going here.
So I should get like a hat and sunglasses?
A hat and sunglasses, yes. um, so this year, um, let me put this up a little bit higher here. No, not gonna go. Okay. Oops. Oh, geez. Okay, let me go back here. Hang on. I gotta open it up again.
What will you design today?
What will I design today? I don't know. Every day I do something in there. Okay, it's thinking. Okay, here we go.
Yes, indeed.
All right, let's wait for the rest of it to show up. Okay, so yes, I'm a bit of a mad scientist slash crazy plant lady. Julie, you've been to my garden, so you know. We sat on the porch and had some hibiscus peppermint tea when you were here a couple weeks ago.
Yes, it
This
was beautiful.
Thank you. This is my still, copper still from Portugal. And you can see the setup here. That big bulbous bowl at the bottom, that's where the water goes. And then this column here is where the plant material goes. You can see some plant material hanging out of the top here in the second picture. But then the steam rises from the water that boils in here, and it goes up through what we call the hat. And you'll probably, oh, the hat's sitting over here on the table before I put it on. And then that goes down into this other vessel, which has a condenser and has cool water running over it. And that cools the steam and turns it back into a liquid, because all of the essence of the plant has been carried up with the initial steam into the hat and then over into the condenser. And what comes out this little opening here is the rose water or the liquid of whatever you're distilling. And then it collects in this beautiful scientific looking teardrop. And then there's a valve here where when that teardrop fills up, I can release it down in here. So if there's any essential oil, it floats on the top of this liquid that's in the teardrop glass vessel. So we can capture it in there. The most I've ever captured is maybe 5 milliliters of oil on a rosemary distillation, because rosemary has a lot of oil in it. So
Good yield.
yeah, yeah. So that's the setup. And now I'll show you the gathering of the roses. So Rosa rugosa is the variety that I get because it's so abundant here. It's an Asian version of the rose, and it sends out little tubers, much like peppermint does. If you've ever had peppermint in your garden, you know you have to have it contained because it'll run all over the place. So it sends out these runners. So there are big areas in the dunes just near the beach here that have these wild roses. Some of them are white, some of them are pink, reddish color. Um, but this particular group of Rosa rugosa sits up on a sand dune. You can see in these pictures, there's Scotch broom in here too that's invasive, and it's gotten in here. But it
What's in
sits
the
up
background?
the background.
Yeah, on the left there, behind you. What's that?
That is the estuary. It's where the three rivers, the Nicanicum, the Nicoxie, and the Neawana rivers all come together and dump out into the ocean. We call it Little Beach. It's a really fun place to take your kids and look for sand dollars and go crabbing and just have a good time. I also found some sea beans. It's a succulent that grows at the high tide line that you can harvest. It tastes like little French green beans that are kind of salty.
Right.
It's also right to the left of this area where I'm standing
Huh?
is unceded Chinook territory. So it's where the indigenous people still come for their summer
Uh-huh.
gathering. There's herbs and different things on that piece of land. And it's a very, very special place to me. And I think it's really interesting
Sacred.
that the rose has seated herself up there to overlook this whole area in sort of a regal fashion. So I go early in the morning and collect the rose buds. I only take about 1/3 of what's there because that makes it sustainable so that the pollinators and the rose can still do its thing naturally. So I'm not stripping it or being invasive in my harvest.
Mhm.
Then we bring the rose in and we let it rest out. We put it out on the tables and let them rest. And kind of that gives any of the bugs a chance to crawl out and not be part of the installation.
Escape.
Sometimes there's little ghost spiders in there, maybe earwigs, something
Mm.
like that. But the smell is already intoxicating. It's filling the garage where I'm working, and it's very blissful. So as you can see, I'm totally in my bliss bubble that whole day. I was doing a steam cleaning of the still in this picture, so I didn't have the column on there. I just had the hat, and I was just letting the steam run out because the last distillation I had done was eucalyptus. So I wanted to make sure that all of that was out of the still before I started doing the rose.
Yeah.
And then we bottle it up, and there is our distillation. Like I said, we got about 3 quarts. So if anybody wants any hydrosol, you can always email me.
Yeah.
I do still
I
have
can do a review.
Yeah, you've got yours. I do still have wild rose and honeysuckle co-distillation. I have a new moon goddess hydrosol of clary sage and wild rose that we did on a new moon. And then I still have a co-distillation of lemon balm, rose, and lavender, which is
Mhm.
absolutely divine. So when
Right.
I have other plant material available when the rose is going, I always ask it, would you like to be um, distilled with the rose? And so the answers I get is what we put together. So I'll stop my share here.
Mm.
And but yeah, I wanted to share a little bit of the process and the journey this year.
Well, there is a magic to it. There is an alchemy to it. And what I love about the whole story is the magic of the place, unceded territory, three rivers confluence. Okay. Um, you made a sacred journey. You made a ritual out of it. You had fun. That's okay. I need to emphasize that when you create a ritual, you can have fun. Okay. And you made medicine. And the whole act was a making of medicine, and a being with the earth, and um, distilling that into something useful, and beautiful. Um, uh, Useful things can be beautiful. I think that's one of the messages for me of Rose Hydrosol is um, beauty and usefulness. You use the term regal, that she's found her way, Rosa Rugosa, there, right? In my class, Healing Hydrosols, I call Rose Hydrosol as the queen, frankincense hydrosol as the king. Okay, there's all sorts of historical reasons that that might fit. I'm not talking about Queen Elizabeth, I'm not talking about King James or anybody like that, but the archetypes, and it's old medicine, Persian roots, okay, Chinese roots, um, numerous old world roots, and you got it to indigenous roots. Um, so I'll shut up now and you talk more about.
And it's about engaging all of your senses. You
Mhm.
know, I take the time to walk down there. So I'm seeing what's going on along the creek side when I cross the bridge and down the ridge path where there's other wild roses. And I'll ask, do any of you want to be part of the offering today on the other wild roses? And it's like there's this magical trip that you make, and then you stand there, look over and you see, oh wow, the eagles are out there today getting little clams. Or there's a blue heron standing out there waiting for the next fish to go by. And
Mhm.
so you imagine what all life is experiencing simultaneously out there in the dunes. And maybe if you're lucky, we'll see an elk. They've been crossing there, going across the Three River crossing there lately. And you realize you are part of the magic. And we so many times we separate ourselves from nature. Oh, I'm going to go out in nature. No, you are nature. So we're just going out and interacting in a very natural way,
Mhm.
away from screens and away from news reports and things like that. And that's where we find that balance. And then there's the touching, the sensory of touch and taste. I'll be tasting
Right.
the rose petals as much as I'm picking them. It's like little kids picking blueberries. You got to eat your share of them. So it's already in my digestive system as I'm coming back from this experience.
It's an immersive experience.
Yeah, very immersive.
Yeah.
So, and then when it comes to the smell, when that hydrosol starts coming out in that steam form, those first little droplets, and you're like, oh, here she is.
Mhm.
She has transformed and gone through all this alchemy, and here she's offering the medicine.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then I dry a certain portion of them. I always make sure I pick more than I'm going to use so that I can bring them back and dry them and use them in my teas or grind them up into powders and put them in other things. So, yeah,
Mhm. Yeah. So,
we can use these on points too.
oh my God, what a concept! Whoa. So, which points? Hmm. Hmm. Which points?
And shall we use?
Um, I want to add one thing here, especially as we're getting ready to put it on points, is um, with the use of rose essential oil, quite often people go, cost too much. It's too expensive. Okay. Some, especially the Rosa Damascena, It is so sweet. Some people just don't like it. Okay. And, my response to that is usually dilute, 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 or substitute. Okay. Rose hydrosol is both a dilution and a substitution. Okay. And, I've done like festivals, gatherings of people, and, promoting my work and stuff. And when I say, do you know what a hydrosol is? People are, huh? And when I say, do you know what rose water is? They know. They have an experience of something that is usually considered a cosmetic or a luxury of some sort. And they like it or they don't like it, but they don't really understand the medicinal aspect. That it might soften their skin is usually, that's what I use it for. So hydration, if you will. But so much more, right? And if you were going to use it on a point, what point would you use? I mean, you said third eye already, which was your instant distillation point.
Well,
Okay.
I think of CD17. I also think of PC7,
Mm,
that trust point, because I think, you know,
mm,
those lends an atmosphere of support, of security, of safety, of trust.
mhm.
And I think it also can be cooling. I think of menopause, keeping our cool. I also use peppermint, and we'll talk a little bit about peppermint too. But what when I work with women in their menopause, it's like, okay, you're having to reestablish a trust and a security within yourself because you have a body that you don't understand right now. So that's sort of that basis back to that trust point, and then we can work on that cooling aspect after that.
Mm.
Maybe bringing that peppermint in, but so yeah, those are my thoughts about just in my everyday world working with people.
So just because I can, all right, pericardium 7,
Mhm.
there it is. I got it. And I'm going
Right,
to do this.
it's in the wrist crease, right in the middle here, for those of you who are.
There's two tendons that go into the palm. Okay, this is where Peter Parker shoots his web from. That's pericardium 7. Okay, Spider-Man. Okay, right there. Yeah,
Mm,
that's nice too. You can do this and
so nice. Yes, it can kind of like just give yourself some support.
a cradle.
Abundance from the universe, from this mudra point. I love
So,
it.
so one of the metaphors, and which is actually more of a description, all right, you harvest the petals of rose before the dawn of a new day. Okay, the oils that are in the rose petals, okay, are very waxy and they will basically volatilize at a relatively low temperature under the influence of sunshine. They'll evaporate, they'll be gone. Okay, so it's, I love that metaphor, the dawn of a new day. Oh, my screen decided to go out and now it's back. The um, One of the uses of rose oil, and also I would say rose water, rose hydrosol, would be for depression, for grief, for like, how can I go on? How can I face a new day? Right. And, um, you mentioned menopause, and water is the natural remedy to fire. That's my hot flash for the day. Okay. Um, the understanding of how, when, and why it's distilled encapsulates some of what the medicine can be or is used for. Am I making sense out there? Yeah, I love those headlines. Okay. Um, and again, um, you had a fun journey and you blessed us with a distillation of a day, a plant, and a place. When I experience your hydrosol, the Rosa rugosa, and I compare it to like a Rosa damascena, okay, classic rose hydrosol or rose water. Um, I don't think it's just my projection; it's wilder. Okay, and I believe in cultivation as an art and a practice, but also you, it's highly cultivated there by its own nature and by the environment. It lives in particular places. In fact, it has taken over a regal position in the dunes, in your words. All right. Um, that tells us something about the spirit of the plant, the intention of the plant, the chi of the plant. And you can bottle it.
So when we talk about its energetics, it has this sweetness to it. It
Mhm.
has that circulating quality. So I always think of that infinity loop.
Yeah.
It has affinities to the heart, the pericardium, liver, gallbladder, triple heater, lung, and Ren and Chong, or governing vessel and reception vessel. So
And
wood and fire elements,
those, the Ren and the Chong, the attribution of an oil or a substance to a particular organ is very common. The appellation of it or putting it together with one of the eight extraordinary vessels is much rarer. Okay. And so you have things that are fundamentally effective on the hormones, especially the reproductive hormones. They get Ren and Chong. Okay. Um, that's no small feat. And again, you're using with menopause, and menopause is sort of the adolescence of elderhood. I used to think I don't know what my body's doing right now, which is the classic teenager. Like I just like doing things I didn't. Where did that hair come from, man? Uh,
Mhm.
yeah, but now the hair's turning gray. Okay, now the sweat that now has an odor now is just too much sweat, right? Um, that's a fire. Um, and it's a reproductive or a renewal fire. Um, that there's an idea, and it's very parallel to the eight extraordinary vessels, that life begets life, and that the way to heal is to go back to how things were when you were young. That original patterning of running of energy, that's the Ren and the Du. And the Chong is what activates, really motivates, moves that in the body. Okay. A hot flash can be described as an eruption of the Chongmai, flushing up the channel and causing havoc. We'll just put it that way. All right. Um, that's also a description, or Chongmai is opened at orgasm. This is usually what gets people's attention, is when I say the word orgasm, people say, "What did he say?" Come again? Sorry. Um, that, and again, for me with the rose, there is something regal. Um, and I don't mean it in a classist sort of way, but it's like there's a natural regality, a natural presence of command, but command of oneself, not command in an authoritarian way. Um,
Yeah, I kind of think of it as this elevation of spirit because it's
mhm,
so calming for the Shen. And
mhm,
we feel there's a lift and elevation of spirit.
mhm,
That makes
very
sense.
much so. That's the one of the purposes, if we could say it this way, of the Chong Mai is to take matter and elevate it into the spirit. Okay. The Chong Mai is open when semen meets egg. That's the original spark of it. Okay. And there is this like um, things start mattering, and then things start moving. And that movement is chi. And then the chi starts evolving. And one of the evolutions in the spiral is Shen. There's the Jing, Qi, Shen.
This uh, resolution in uh, or integration, more integration into mind body. Uh,
Mm-hmm,
and also when we look at Rose in those life death schisms, like in menopause is this life death thing in rebirth. um, I think it gives a deeper integration of uh, within the properties. So engenders that bliss and peacefulness and protection.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, and you just used the word there, engenders. Okay. Um, Again, I made the dichotomy: the rose is the queen and frankincense is the king. Then that's an engenderment of sorts. Okay. Um, and one of my first reactions to the smell of roses, okay, is it's a feminine, there's a feminine quality to it. And again, that um, human hormones, human reproductive hormones, are soluble, yeah, and rose oil is soluble in them. They're oils that basically can blend together, and that makes a regulation, or potentially makes a regulation, and that's the work of dealing with menopause,
Mhm.
is re-regulating a system that can no longer sustain the previous regulation.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Mm. Now that we're all blissed out,
Yeah.
can we move to peppermint as cooling, keeping our cool in this uh, heated temperament of what's happening in society right now? Oh, I'm gonna
Yeah.
need some cooling. Mm.
Listen, I'm going to disappear for a minute because that is in the refrigerator and I need to get it. I'll be right
Oh, and
back.
I can talk about why we keep our hydrosols in the refrigerator while you're dashing out.
Perfection.
I do keep all of my hydrosols in the refrigerator. It helps to prolong their life. And I just love to spritz with something that's just come out of the fridge because it's more fresh and it gives me that sense of really having a fresh experience with it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about peppermint because it is, again, it's one of those creepers. It sends out those uh, those little runners that they want to populate. They want to take over a whole area.
Yeah.
So I'm also thinking of peppermint if we're putting it with lemon as a
Mm.
liver decongestant. And I think liver is really important when we talk about menopause as well. And so this wasn't a show about menopause, but we keep running back to these threads that run through this whole changing in life and change in general. So, and also, uh, peppermint doesn't always smell. I mean, it's not going to smell like the minty peppermint that you pick off the plant. It has a little bit different aroma to it when it's distilled.
Mm.
It still has that freshness, but it's not quite as strong or pungent. And you'll find that, that's a lot of the difference between working directly with an essential oil and working with a hydrosol. It's not that, which doesn't mean it's not as potent energetically. It is absolutely,
Right.
but it has a little bit different smell. I'm just grabbing my peppermint from my kit.
And the different smell is an indication of the different energetics. And
Right,
it's not vastly different, but it's a different part of the whole plant spectrum.
right, right. The peppermint that I have to offer is done on a super full moon harvest, which was really fun. Sometimes we distill at night on a super full moon. Um,
Wow, you're a mad scientist and a witch.
I know. Oh, I am, aren't I?
And I mean that in the highest regards.
Highest regard. Yes, I take that as a compliment. Just like most of my neighbors call me the hippie chick, and I'm like, yes, I own it. Because they also say, when everything goes sideways and we have to fend for ourselves, I'm going to Angela's house because she knows what to eat and what to look for. Oh, so anyway, so our peppermint is energetically, it's a pungent green, and pungent things lift. Yeah.
Hmm.
Uh, it has a rising effect, but it also comes back to circulate. So it pairs really nicely with our rose.
Hmm.
Yeah. Uh, has an affinity for digestion, so stomach, spleen, gallbladder, all those kinds of things. It does have an affinity to the lungs as well. So, um,
And in thinking of peppermint essential oil, one of my first things is start low, go slow. Okay. Um, if I added peppermint essential oil to the rose water, okay, I'm thinking minuscule amounts. And then I need to shake it or maybe add a little bit of sea salt or something to emulsify it. You've been talking about the peppermint hydrosol. Okay. Um, I think I'm gonna have to get some of that from you when next you distill it, okay? Because I don't have no peppermint hydrosol. Um, so the uh, one of the things I love about peppermint is that we use pepper, which we usually associate with heat, okay? But because of the spectrum of peppermint oil and hydrosol, it has a cooling effect, a menthol effect, okay? Um, and you know how ice can burn? Okay, if you hold on to a cube of ice, you're going to get kind of a frostbite localized, and that's a burn of sorts. We have receptors that are, pain receptors, and pain receptors can be sensitive to things that feel hot, feel cold, or that feel pressure. Okay, and not all receptors are created equal, but there's a spread of them. All right. The hot ones are like the chili oil ones, or like the capsaicin, the Scoville units. All right. The cold ones and the hot ones aren't hot from the oven. They're hot to our experience of them. Okay. The cool ones, the mentholated ones, menthol, peppermint, that sort of thing. Okay. Um, and again, they're not from the freezer or the refrigerator. They chemically are. So we have pain and pain relieving receptors that we can use hot-ish substances and coolish substances to help relieve pain, right? We also have, and this is what makes acupressure work, receptors that respond to pressure and even acupressure, all right?
right.
Now, if I take the word pain, usually I think of aspirin and I think I have to relieve pain, but pain might be imbalance, the pain of hormones changing. There's the menopause, there's the adolescence. All
Mhm.
right. And so then there's a spectrum of things we could do to help the body balance, to help the body re regulate. Right. Um, I'm going to go back into what we're talking about here as far as substances. Rose has a regulation that is gently balancing the circulation, the flow. Um, uh, we're literally helping one feel back in the flow. Okay. Um, and then peppermint has this kind of enlivening kind of it wakes you up. Okay. And it's um, there is a cooling um, and after it wakes you up for me, after it wakes me up, it also calms me down or settles me down.
Yeah, that's that coming back to circulate. Yeah.
Yeah.
If I'm wanting to release some heat and that can be irritability or that can be physical heat as in a hot flash.
Mhm.
I want to use large intestine 11. So go to that.
It's the can do point.
I can do Rosie.
Angela the Riveter.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spritz a little bit on each side, and then I'm going to just place my finger there and rest gently. So I can already feel that cooling.
Yeah.
And then when you sit there with it long enough, you feel that circulating back around. And
Yeah.
it's just sort of piggybacking on the rose that I used earlier.
Mm. I'm laughing because the way we use oils and hydrosols, okay. Um, I've had a number of patients that after a session, they've gone on into the world and maybe they've been shopping. and they're at the grocery store and they're in the checkout line, and someone behind them is going,
I
"That
love
smells good."
it. Yep.
Um, I dance every Sunday, and it's five rhythms, and so we don't talk on the floor while we're dancing. A
Mhm.
few words might come out, but it's not a conversation. And I got to admit, okay, before I go, I apply essential oils, okay, and I don't. It's not like a huge amount, all right, but in the middle of the dance, I might hug somebody, and even though we don't use words quite often, you smell good.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, yeah, mm, the there's a joy in it.
So
Um,
what's happening here, I believe, on with peppermint and on this point is we're circulating the chi
mhm.
and we're circulating the blood.
Yeah, yeah.
That's how the yin and the yang become balanced again.
Motion is lotion.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Um, Speak to this. One of the words that's often used with rose oil and also with the hydrosol is emollient.
Mm.
Okay, as a technical term, because hydration is getting water in. What is an emollient doing?
Well, to me, that says permeation,
Hmm. Well,
but with lipids as well.
yes, yes.
Yeah, you're working with lipids, which is, essential oils love lipids.
Well, and like the reproductive hormones are on a lipid backbone.
Mhm.
Okay. We have this terrible, wonderful molecule called cholesterol, the backbone of any testosterone, estrogen, progesterone. It is basically a cholesterol backbone.
And what happens when women go into menopause? Their cholesterol levels go up because that cholesterol is trying to protect you.
Yeah.
But doctors say, "Oh no, it should be below 150." I'm like, "No, I'm postmenopausal. It's okay. Talk to me if it's 750, okay?"
Yeah. Clearly. Well, the what they're reacting to is inflamed cholesterol. That the inflammatory index in that particular person has made the cholesterol cook in a way that leads to a hardening of arteries and sclerosis in various different locations, including the brain, although they're mostly worried about the cardiovascular system. Okay. But the kind of cholesterol, those fats and fatty acids, are essential to the health of the nervous system, to the skin, to the heart, to the entire system. Okay. So we need emollients. We're aware of them trying to drink more water. But how do we get more good emollients? There's I can ingest this by putting it on my skin. I think I told you about this, Angelo. In teaching a class on hydrosols at the end of the Saturday evening, I pull out a bottle of champagne. You fill the glasses with a hydrosol halfway and then champagne the other halfway. Okay. It's an emollient and possibly a lubricant. Okay. I'll leave it at that for now. All right. But that quality of, in food, we use the term mouthfeel. Okay. Creamy like an avocado is supposed to be.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, the idea that, you know, it, um, again, I'm a dude. Okay. So I have no clue about skincare until women start talking to me about their skin. And then
Mhm.
it's like, you guys got all these creams, you got these lotions, you got these unguents. It's like, wow, this is like a whole nother alchemy. All right.
My morning routine, right?
Yeah. And it's a nourishing, an emollient nourishing of the skin, but thereby the entire system um, with good oils. Um, I just, we have very little education about how to take care of oneself. We're told mostly don't. Okay. It used to be don't eat fats. Okay. And then it became don't eat the bad fats, eat the good fats. Okay. But it's like, how do you decide what is a bad fat and what is a good fat? Okay. And, you know, is it just food that we ingest in, or are we also ingesting through the skin? Are we also ingesting through the nose? Um, I think what I love about the integration of your work, okay, especially with menopause as subject, okay, is it's an education process, okay, in a person who's dealing with a body that seems out of control to help re-regulate it using natural means of hydration and emollient or balancing qualities.
Yeah, I always find it interesting because culture says, oh, things like massages and those sort of what I think are basic care
Mhm.
are luxury items.
Right,
And it's like, no, that's part of my regular health care, my own personal health care.
right.
And when I'm using a hydrosol, um, it's not because that's a luxury to me. That's because that's part of my basic care and my basic needs for my
Mhm.
body. So, and I think there's a lot of guilt and shame around, oh, I feel guilty because I'm going to take a day for myself and those kind of. No, you you have to do that to maintain your own body and your own rhythms. And so, yeah, so don't feel bad about that.
We must cultivate the garden of ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely, and that includes rose hydrosol or peppermint hydrosol or okay, for instance, I'm gonna go and be part of one of the marches today in my
Mhm.
town, and I'm going to prepare for that by spritzing with rose,
Mhm.
with peppermint. I'm gonna keep my cool, but I'm gonna remain supported and secure and safe and all that good stuff. So
Mm.
that's part of my personal preparation and what I feel like is necessary for my body to be able to go out and do what I do during my day.
Yeah. Um, in these overheated times, all right, I was reading an article from The Guardian from the UK,
Mhm.
and it's talking about nonviolent actions. Okay. And they're not just nonviolent, but there's also love involved. Okay. Um, and it's not like ooh gooey syrupy Hello Kitty love. Okay. It's loving the people, even though you disagree and are not, you are basically um, disengaging or disturbing what is going on. Okay. You are not just calling for change, you're demonstrating it. Be the change you want to be in the world. And um, I, self care is often seen as a luxury item. Okay. And certainly going to a $150 spa, 150 a day, just entrance fee would be a luxury for most people. But actually taking a shower and then using a little bit of rose hydrosol, that's a practicality. That
$10 and you get to use it probably, 50 times. So that's pretty affordable.
and that it's also applicable to daily life and having daily life be an expression of um, bringing love, bringing peace, bringing balance to the world.
Mhm.
And that doesn't mean you don't carry a sign. It doesn't mean you don't have a message to deliver, but it's delivered not just to disturb the status quo, not just to say stop, but also to say why. Okay. For the greater care, for the greater love. Um, I was explaining to my 19-year-old when I used to get arrested for civil disobedience. Okay. Most of it was ecological, most of it was anti nuclear. All right.
When I
So,
used to get arrested.
well, we did it consciously. We did it specifically and categorically non-violently. And
Mhm,
really the challenge was how much love can you bring to the process?
mhm,
We can all bring a lot of heat. We can all bring a lot of anger. And it's righteous anger. If you look at what is happening in the world and you don't have righteous anger, you're missing something. Okay. But that the anger is not transformative in the same way that love is. Okay. The the defensive necessity is what I was explaining to my Ella. Okay. You do something that is disobedient. First, because obedience isn't the chief value. Okay. But more deeply because love is the higher value. Love one another, take care of one another. These are things that they're God, they're at the basis of most religion. They're very Christian. All right. Um, I'm going to just go and say that Rose is an emanation of that value, okay,
mhm.
of
Yeah,
love.
that's why
Um,
I'm doing that before I go to the march today.
yeah,
That's also why I'm doing peppermint to keep my cool
keep your cool.
and
Yeah,
always come back to that love with the rose. So I think this is a perfect pairing for what's happening right now.
yeah,
And I kind of want to end on that happy note of,
yeah, yeah.
and we can share, we can practice civil disobedience, but we can also do it from a loving perspective and keep our cool.
I'm going to say amen and right on, sister, because I can. Yeah, the how we act in the world in the simplest and smallest of ways may be some of the most powerful ways. Um, you know, uh, rose water is a relatively simple substance that's pretty obtainable. Okay. I'm extremely lucky. I have a pusher and she was able to get me, 4 ounces of it. Okay.
Yes. Anybody can email me, angela.sidlo@gmail.com if you want some too.
And I'm
So,
just going to make one pitch. I know people that make rose water by picking their own rose petals, getting some distilled water, putting the rose petals on that, and then putting that out in the moonlight or
mm,
putting that out in the sunlight for a time. Okay. Hey, works for me. You know?
absolutely. Yeah.
All right.
All right. We always end our sessions with if anybody has any questions, you can pop those into the chat.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Good energy to everybody. Some Reiki energy. Feel it. Let the rose energy and the peppermint carry through as well. Wishing everybody a beautiful day
Angela? Yeah. May peace be with you.
and a happy Father's Day weekend
Hey, cool.
to you, Joseph.
Thank you.
All right. Yay. We will be back. We are always here on the second Saturday of every month to spread the magic and wisdom of essential oils and share something fun and interesting. Next month, we have Kelly Ablard, who is going to be coming to us from the Armid Institute. It's all about biodiversity and what's happening all over. She's got something special going on in Crete this year. So she's going to tell us all about it. So you'll want to tune in for that.
Yes, indeed. I'll be there for sure.
Okay. Me too.
All right.
See everybody soon. Peace out.
Bye. Peace in.
Yes. Bye bye.